Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we take these huge, complicated stacks of sources and just, boil them down into pure distilled insight.
And if you're tuning in today because you want a shortcut to understanding the hidden mechanics of modern media,
Especially how production techniques are designed to make you feel a certain way.
then you are absolutely in the right place.
Today we're doing a really critical analysis. We are not looking at what you see on screen.
No, not at all. We're focused completely on what you hear.
We're peeling back the layers on the entire sonic architecture of unscripted media. So think high drama reality TV, but also, those carefully crafted narrative news podcasts.
And the question we're tackling today is, I think, really fundamental. Is the music and sound design you're hearing just background noise? Or is it something more?
Is it a hidden, highly sophisticated language that's been specifically engineered to control your emotions and ultimately your thoughts?
Our mission is to trace that control mechanism. We're going from the industrial production metrics that composers use all the way down to the deepest parts of your brainstem.
We're going to uncover how music, how strategically placed sound effects, and even, and this is so important, how intentional silence functions not as some kind of artistic decoration.
But as a prescriptive tool.
Yes, a toolkit. It's designed to manage let's call it the inherent ambiguity of unscripted footage. You know those shots, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where a reality star is just sitting on a couch. Maybe they're thinking about lunch. Who knows?
And the toolkit's job is to tell you, the audience, with absolute certainty exactly what you should be interpreting from that silence.
And what emotional reaction you should be having.
And to do this, we've connected some really diverse sources. We've got detailed production documents from these huge music libraries, neurobiological studies on how we process emotion.
Psychoacoustics research, and some really key academic investigations into narrative framing and how it changes our attitudes.
And central to all of this, to understanding this high-level industrial craft, is a figure who really brings it all into focus. Brad Segal.
He's a composer, and he's worked on some of the biggest American reality shows you can think of. We're talking The Bachelorette, American Idol, America's Got Talent.
But what makes Segal so fascinating is his background. He's Juilliard trained.
Right. He started out wanting to be a concert pianist.
And then he transitions into this, highly commercial craft, and that gives him this really rare insight into the mechanics of composing for specific moods, and he's open about it.
He talks about writing for emotional states. He literally calls manipulation and goofiness.
And that combination, a high-level classical music education meeting the sort of low-road emotional needs of mass-market television.
That perfectly highlights our core thesis.
Which is that the music and sound design are strategically engineered to completely bypass your rational skepticism.
It's a tool designed to get an instinctive, immediate emotional response from you before your critical thinking, your prefrontal cortex, even has a chance to catch up and engage.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start exactly where the composers do.
The production floor. The industrial nuts and bolts of the playbook. So when we picture a composer, we often think of, this inspired artist in a dark room writing some sweeping score.
Right, the romantic image.
But composers like Brad Segal, especially in this unscripted world, they got their real education in something much more, mechanical.
Commercial timing.
Exactly.
Segal said that his time early in his career at Jingle Company was actually his most vital training ground for writing underscore.
Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was tasked with writing these incredibly short, finite musical ideas, sometimes just, 12, 14, 20-second riffs.
And in commercials, the music just gets chopped off abruptly, right?
Totally. It gets cut off to make way for the voiceover or the bumper at the end. And at first he found that really frustrating.
I can imagine. For a classically trained musician, that must feel wrong.
It was a huge adjustment, but it forced him to realize, wait a minute, I could write an ending that fits perfectly within that small time frame.
So he started composing for the constraint.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this idea of crafting a complete, correct musical idea that has a finite, measured amount of time that translated directly into things like the little 2 or 3 second bumpers in sitcoms.
Or more relevant for us, the cues used to bridge scenes in reality TV.
Exactly. That sharp attention to commercial craft, the need to be short, punchy, and functional. That is now the absolute foundation of reality TV scoring.
And because the goal is just rapid, scalable emotional response across, what, dozens of episodes a season?
They have to rely on a highly standardized musical vocabulary.
These cues aren't about some vague artistic mood.
No, they're about hitting specific, highly repeatable, and highly recognizable emotional marks. It's an assembly line of feeling.
Okay, so let's take a concrete example, like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette.
Perfect. The production has a whole library of specific emotional categories. For instance, there's the music they call the exit cue.
The exit cue.
Seagal sometimes labels it the demote cue.
Demote. Wow.
And this music plays as an eliminated contestant leaves. You know the scene. They're walking to the limo, giving their final, often tearful, exit interview.
So logically, you'd expect something, I don't know, profoundly sad, crushing even.
And that is precisely what they avoid. The music, even though the person was just rejected, is often described as solemn but distinctly positive.
Positive.
Yeah. The explicit goal of that music cue is not to portray the person as defeated or weak.
So what's the message they're sending?
The emotional message to you, the viewer, is you will continue. This is not going to destroy you. It's designed so the audience can maintain respect and empathy for that person.
Okay, but hold on. I have to challenge that a little. Isn't that more about protecting the franchise than the contestants' actual dignity?
That's a crucial insight.
If the audience feels too devastated, they might stop watching. Or they might start to hate the lead who did the eliminating.
It is pure narrative management. 100%. Think about it. If the person leaves totally broken and destroyed,
They're less likely to come back for Bachelor in Paradise.
or another spinoff, it's a pragmatic business decision. They're maintaining the contestants' marketability and the integrity of the whole franchise ecosystem.
So the music is this gentle, hopeful cushion that keeps the door open.
Exactly. For the participant and for the audience who might want to follow them to the next show, it's the sonic equivalent of "it's not you, it's me, and please don't burn our franchise down on social media."
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now let's flip that. Let's go to the big manufactured romantic moments.
Right, the big climaxes. Seagal's team calls this the romance cue, often with the label astonishing.
I'm picturing soaring strings, maybe a gentle piano, that classic bodice ripper sound.
You've got it. And composers love writing these because they require this deliberate, stretched-out tension.
How do they build that?
They rely on what are called set marks. These are specific points in the music where it builds and builds and keeps building. It almost dares you to expect a resolution, but then it just holds. It holds that tension for an extra beat or two.
And those breaks, those pauses in the music, are intentional.
Oh, they are explicit requirements for the editing team. They give the picture editors clean audio space to insert those mandatory wide sweeping visuals.
The crane shots, the drone shots.
The helicopter circling dramatically over the lovers on the mountaintop, all of that.
So the music isn't just reacting to the visual, it's actually, structurally, dictating what the picture can be in the editing bay.
Yes. And that requires incredible precision.
Which brings us to the standardized blueprint. The industrial production metrics that composers have to follow when they create tracks for these big music libraries.
This is the factory floor of emotional sound.
And this blueprint is super rigid, right? It's designed for an editor who's under a ton of pressure.
Incredibly rigid. For example, when you submit a track, it has to be a minimum of 2 minutes, but absolutely no more than 3 minutes long.
And why is that?
Because editors need variety, but they also need predictable file sizes. The vast majority of scenes they need to score will fall somewhere in that window.
And there's a rule about complexity, too. It can't just be a flat drone.
Correct. The instructions literally mandate that composers never let 4 bars go by without adding something new.
Something new.
A new element, a new instrument, a subtle change. This is baked into the structure to prevent the music from getting stagnant and to maintain this perceived energy. The editor needs to feel the track is constantly lively.
You mentioned before that the music has to look good in the editing software. The break is part of that, right?
It is a purely visual tool. Every single track requires a break, a significant drop in volume, right around the 1 minute mark.
Why?
Because editors often don't listen to every track from start to finish. They scan the waveform of the audio file in the editing software.
So they're looking at the shape of the sound.
Exactly. And if that waveform is a solid, flat block of sound without any peaks or valleys, they call them dales or dynamic dips, the editor often won't even bother clicking play.
Because a flat waveform looks boring.
It signals a non-dynamic, potentially useless track. So the break has to be there to visually prove that the track has dynamic variation and is flexible enough for an edit.
They're literally selling the track based on how its waveform looks. That's amazing.
And it extends to the endings, too. Composers have to provide two different endings.
Okay, well,
One has to be a short, definitive stop, a hard cut, a quick, final punctuation mark.
for a hard commercial break or a quick scene change.
Exactly. And the second is the long chord fade out.
And what's that for?
This one is ingenious. The composition itself stops on a final sustained chord, but the ambient fade can continue for another 5–10 seconds.
So it's perfect for carrying over dialogue smoothly.
Or for a slow transition. If an editor needs to transition while a character finishes a sentence, they use the long fade. If they need impact, they use the short stop. Editors demand both options for maximum flexibility.
Okay, so beyond the structure, what about the genres? What's actually in demand in these libraries right now?
Well, the core market is always demanding well-produced contemporary stuff. Rock, pop, folk, hip-hop. They're commercial, easy to edit, instantly recognizable.
And what are they told to avoid?
They're often explicitly advised to avoid pitching niche genres, things like experimental, lo-fi, or, deep classical tracks. They're just harder to place in general audience shows.
But there are a couple of categories that are always in demand no matter what.
Absolutely. There is a constant, unceasing demand for tension-type cues.
Ambient, spooky, unsettling music.
Always. And the second is the contemplative piano cue. Those simple, often minor key pieces you hear in nature docs, science segments, or when a character is having an internal monologue.
And what about trends? Is anything shifting?
Interestingly, yes. While traditional classical or Latin music was often advised against, what they're calling world music, especially Latin or African-inspired sounds, is trending hard right now.
And why is that?
Streaming services. Content is being distributed globally, so they need a broader, more exotic emotional palette to appeal to more audiences.
It all sounds so incredibly efficient. And these little musical snippets aren't just background noise. They're the literal punctuation marks of the story.
Which brings us to bumpers and stingers.
So a bumper is a short passage that denotes a big transition, like going to a commercial break.
And a stinger is the ultra-short form, just 2 or 3 notes. They're used to cue an immediate scene change or, and this is key, to sting the audience with anticipation.
Their function seems purely practical, just to fill a gap. But psychologically, they're critical for keeping people watching.
They have 2 primary functions, and both protect the revenue stream.
Right.
First, they prevent the transition from feeling dry or like a narrative void to be filled. Music just fills that void instantly.
And the second?
The second is key. They prevent channel changing. A stinger catches your ear. It alerts you that something new or important is about to happen.
That little burst of attention.
That burst helps prevent people from flipping the channel during a transition or skipping ahead. They're sonic identifiers that maintain the flow of attention and ultimately guard the commercial break.
The efficiency is just incredible. But now we have to move beyond the production floor and into the neurological impact.
Because this is where the manipulation becomes surgical.
Let's talk about how these manufactured sounds are designed to bypass our logical defenses.
What's truly fascinating here is that the media industry has, maybe without even realizing it, completely mastered leveraging our ancient fundamental neural architecture.
And it all starts with understanding just how powerful music is inside our brains.
Right. Music has a profound neural reach. It doesn't just stimulate one tiny area. Music literally lights up nearly all of the brain.
That's such a powerful way to think about it. It's not just your ears, it's an entire system experience.
Precisely. We are talking about the simultaneous engagement of multiple core systems. This includes the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory.
And the amygdala, which is our emotional center.
Yes, it activates emotional responses based on past experiences. It also engages the limbic system. That's what governs pleasure, motivation, reward.
Which is why a great song can instantly lift your mood.
And then, critically, it engages the motor system. That's the mechanism that makes you tap your feet or want to dance.
So because all these systems are firing at once,
the music gets encoded as a rich experience.
And this rich experience is exactly what makes us so vulnerable when the music is designed to be sudden or alarming or dissonant.
Which is the foundation of the amygdala hijack mechanism.
And this is based on just basic evolutionary wiring.
It is. When you hear a sudden or startling sound, a twig breaking in the forest, or a dramatic sound effect on TV, That auditory input travels through your brainstem along a direct pathway.
And that pathway goes straight to the amygdala.
Your brain's immediate threat detector, its emotional alarm bell. This route is often called the low road to the amygdala.
The low road. So the sound hits the panic button first, before the rational part of your brain even knows what's happening.
Exactly. This low road allows for an immediate, instinctive emotional response, a flash of fear or anticipation or unease before your visual cortex has fully processed the image.
And definitely before the logical prefrontal cortex has had time to rationally assess the situation.
It's emotion over logic, by design, and it's instantaneous.
And the tools they use to do this are incredibly specific. Let's talk about musical threat computation. How a stinger sound actually mimics a real threat.
Our brains process dissonant or sudden sounds like a screeching metallic stinger the exact same way they process a threat vocalization, like an animal scream.
So if a sound is sudden, high-pitched, and abrasive.
The brain registers it as a potential danger signal, full stop.
So when we hear that high-tension dun-dun sound on The Bachelorette right before a commercial break, our brain isn't just listening to music.
No, it's initiating a defensive protocol.
And what does that do to our brain activity?
It shifts it dramatically. It pulls resources away from the logical prefrontal cortex, the part that does deliberation and critical thought, and it shunts that energy to the midbrain.
Specifically to the periaqueductal gray, or PEG.
Yes. The PEG is a term that probably needs a little more context for people.
For sure. Where is it? What does it do?
It's a really compact area deep in the brainstem, part of the midbrain. It's one of the oldest, most primitive parts of our nervous system.
And its job.
Its primary role is to coordinate our vital defensive behaviors. So when it's activated, it governs our immediate involuntary responses.
The freeze response.
The freeze response, the immediate flight response, or the panic response. By using sounds that trigger this, the media is literally forcing your body into a state of physical alarm, regardless of what the picture's actually showing.
That is just. It's sophisticated manipulation. Engineering a startle response.
Yeah.
Let's get into the technical detail of how they actually create that iconic, dramatic stinger. I know they often use an instrument called a waterphone.
Well, waterphone is perfect for this. It's a metallic, often bowl-shaped instrument with these rods around the rim. You play it with a bow. It's famous in horror scores for creating those unsettling, dissonant sounds.
And for reality TV, they're aiming for very specific notes.
Very specific. Sound designers often focus on the pitches G5 and G-flat 5 because those notes are so close together they create this intensely abrasive, screeching discord that just maximizes the perceived danger signal for the brain.
But it's not just about recording the instrument. The real magic, or manipulation, happens in the digital processing.
It's all digital surgery. They use harmonic distortion plugins like Avid's Lo-Fi, not just to add some grit, but to introduce specific, controlled digital noise. It makes the sound harsher, less musical, more mechanical, more threatening.
But the most surgical part is using something called spectral editing.
Right, with tools like Isotope RX.
So explain spectral editing for us. How does that translate to my nervous system?
Spectral editing lets them see a detailed, three-dimensional visual map of the sound frequency over time, so they can go in and perform the surgical shaping.
What are they shaping?
They're adjusting the sound's high and low-end noise to maximize its abrasive quality, but the single most important parameter they manipulate is the amplitude slope.
The amplitude slope, what is that?
Think of it as the attack, the sharpness of the sound's start. They are shaping the sound to hit maximum volume almost instantaneously.
So the sharper the start, the bigger the jump.
The steeper, the sharper, the more abrupt that amplitude slope is, the more intense the physiological startle response is in the viewer. They are literally optimizing the sound to trigger the maximum jump, the maximum PEG activation, and the most immediate anxiety.
So we've covered the quick, sharp sting, the sonic jump scare, but manipulation can also be a slow burn.
Yes. Let's move from the startle response to the sustained anxiety that's created by delayed resolution. This connects to our innate need for closure.
This is all about how Western tonal music is built on tension and release.
And when reality TV scores, especially during dramatic eliminations or cliffhangers, deliberately delay that expected release, the neurological impact is immediate. It triggers hyperactivity in the orbitofrontal cortex, the OFC.
The OFC is involved in decision-making and reward. It's right behind your forehead.
Exactly. It's the region that's heavily involved in assessing outcomes and predicting future rewards. So when the music promises that harmonic payoff but keeps holding back,
The OFC goes into overdrive.
it's trying to predict and force that resolution.
And what's the consequence of this for the viewer?
What's wild is that the hyperactivity they see in the OFC under these conditions neurologically mirrors brain activity that's been documented in people with obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Wow.
Your brain genuinely requires that musical resolution. It creates a physiological demand. We call it a sonic debt.
That phrase, sonic debt, is so powerful.
Mhm.
Are we basically saying the industry is deliberately designing a form of addiction through sound?
In essence, yeah, that intense physiological need for closure is a critical psychological mechanism that is designed to keep you hooked. It transforms passive viewing into a neurological compulsion. You can't look away,
Your brain needs the debt to be resolved.
which translates directly into binging behavior and guarantees you'll be back for the next episode.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the less dramatic, but just as intentional effect music has on our attention and memory. This is relevant for everything, including the ads those stingers are guarding.
Research using EEG, specifically measuring alpha rhythm suppression, which is a great indicator of active attention, shows a really clear relationship with tempo.
So fast music grabs your attention.
Fast-tempo background music significantly activates the audience's attentional process compared to scenes with no music at all. If the goal is to capture and hold your attention, a quick, upbeat pace is mandatory.
But there's a paradox here. If the music is too complex, it just becomes distracting, doesn't it?
Absolutely. While fast tempo increases attention, if the music has a lot of harmonic changes or multiple instruments, it becomes cognitive noise. Studies show this complexity can distract the consumer and actually impair their memory for the central message.
Like the dialogue or the product being sold.
Exactly. So that standard industry metric demanding low harmonic change in TV tracks makes perfect sense.
It's highly calculated. The music has to be emotionally powerful. It has to make you feel something, but it has to be simple enough to not distract from the words or the action.
They want you to feel strongly about the contestant, but still retain the story they're telling you about why that contestant is either a hero or a villain. It's all about calculated influence, high emotional signal, perfectly managed, low cognitive noise.
Okay, so let's take all this science of priming and apply it directly to the media we're all consuming. Priming is basically telling you what to feel before you can decide for yourself.
And if an editor plays a melancholy minor key string quartet over a totally neutral visual, a contestant just sitting alone, maybe looking down at their shoe,
The music immediately primes your brain.
the music forces an interpretation. Logically, you might think the person is just resting or bored or waiting for a producer to tell them what to do.
But the music bypasses all that logic.
It convinces the viewer that the person must be lonely or sad or deep in thought. As one source put it, sound goes straight from our ears to our hearts, bypassing that rational gatekeeper of the prefrontal cortex. It triggers sympathy or discomfort without you even consciously realizing it.
And to really understand how effective this framing is, especially for changing people's attitudes on really complex issues, we can look at this incredible academic research done on narrative news podcasts.
This is real-world proof of music's persuasive power.
And this study was crucial because the researchers chose the narrative news format exclusively.
And why? Because research has shown that narrative news, which uses characters and story arcs, is far more effective than just traditional informational news at influencing a listener's emotional state, their attitude, and a key psychological metric called transportation.
And for their topic, they chose something highly charged, natural gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale region.
And they deliberately crafted two distinct narrative frames for the same set of facts.
What were the frames?
The first was economic benefit, EB. It focused on local businesses booming, job creation, families benefiting financially, the positive side.
In a second.
The second was environmental consequence, EC. And this frame was deeply character-driven. It focused specifically on people like the Sowers, a family who detailed their severe personal experiences.
Like contaminated well water?
Contaminated well water, dizziness, and the fact that their land had become completely worthless.
And the power of that EC frame alone, just driven by empathy, was just undeniable in the results.
It was startling. The EC frame, the story, focusing on personal suffering, caused listeners to experience a significant, measurable increase in empathy for the characters.
And that empathy led to What?
It led to significantly higher negative emotional affect, and, most importantly, it resulted in significantly more incidences of attitude change among the listeners. Overwhelmingly, it shifted their stance towards opposing gas drilling.
So the narrative frame focusing on personal emotional consequences was the massive lever for shifting political attitudes.
It was the primary driver.
But here's the really surprising finding, and it was about the music itself. This challenged a core assumption.
It really did. The researchers hypothesized that congruent music, so pairing negative, moody minor key music with that sad environmental consequence frame, would cause more attitude change than incongruent music.
Which makes total sense.
It does, but that hypothesis was not supported by the data. The power of that emotional narrative frame alone was so strong it created such high levels of empathy that the specific musical choice, whether it was sad or even slightly upbeat, did not significantly increase the likelihood of attitude change.
Hold on. That seems completely counterintuitive. Are we saying that if they played like a triumphant trumpet fanfare over a story of a family losing their home, it wouldn't weaken the message at all?
What it suggests is that once that emotional hook is set by deep narrative engagement, especially stories that generate high empathy, the specific musical choice becomes secondary to the narrative's transportive power. Your brain is already so emotionally invested in the character's suffering.
Okay, so that brings us back to that concept of transportation. Can you explain what that means again for the listener?
Transportation is that deep immersion in a story where you essentially lose track of your own immediate physical reality.
You feel like you're in the story.
Exactly. And when a listener is highly transported, their critical defenses drop significantly. Their ability to think rationally or critically about the information or the source or the message embedded in the story is dramatically reduced.
And the studies show that increased transportation led to increased empathy, which directly affected attitude, regardless of the music playing in the background.
Yes. And here is the truly crucial, almost disturbing insight from the underlying studies. If a participant is highly transported or empathizes strongly enough with the characters,
Yes.
the factuality of the story has no discernible impact on their attitude change.
Wow.
Emotional immersion trumps rational truth. It makes the listener incredibly vulnerable to persuasion.
And we see this principle just refined and codified in reality TV through the use of the leitmotif.
This is a powerful Wagnerian concept, a recurring musical theme that's designed to symbolize a specific person or object or idea.
Like in major film scores.
Think of Lord of the Rings. Researchers analyzing emotional responses to the themes found that the musical motifs associated with the hobbits correlated very highly with feelings of peacefulness and tenderness.
And the evil themes.
The themes for Sauron and his armies correlated with significantly low levels of peacefulness and tenderness. The music instantly carries the emotional freight.
So in reality TV, repetition and association are the whole game.
Absolutely. The repetitive pairing of a character-specific cue, a shady track, a heartbreak track, leads to what's called evaluative conditioning.
The emotion of the situation gets transferred to the music itself.
Exactly. And once you're conditioned, the mere introduction of the first few notes of that character's theme can trigger the associated emotion or feeling of unease even before the event actually happens.
It's anticipatory manipulation.
It removes the need for any subtlety at all.
And this leads directly to the most destructive use of this sonic playbook. The shady noise and the villain edit.
This is where emotional manipulation targets real people for the sake of manufactured drama.
And this technique is so devastatingly effective because it weaponizes that immediate emotional response we talked about earlier.
Editors apply what are literally called shady noises, metallic slicing sounds, dramatic low-frequency whooshing blasts at moments when a contestant is speaking or acting in a completely neutral way.
So they'll do this while someone is just, I don't know, pouring a glass of water. But the sound subconsciously tells the viewer, what?
This person is being deceptive. They're hiding something. They're dodgy.
So they're weaponizing that amygdala hijack mechanism against a specific person on screen. They're triggering unease without providing any rational visual evidence for it.
The editor is effectively labeling a real human being as untrustworthy using only sound.
And the result is the infamous villain edit.
Which is nothing less than a deliberate, sustained editorial judgment call about a real person. A classic example from our sources is Nick Viall on The Bachelorette.
Right. Sources noted his path in the season was pretty stable. He was skeptical, reserved.
But the producers needed more drama, so they, quote, threw him under the bus.
How did they do that, specifically, with sound and editing?
They presented his neutral actions as aggressive behavior. For instance, Vile called a producer to ask if he could speak to the Bachelorette, a simple request.
And how was that edited?
By applying these shady noises and using this hard-driving underscore music, they made it appear stalkerish and belligerent for maximum dramatic impact. The editors just slaughtered him, even though he gave them very little genuine conflict to work with.
The music filled the void and created the villain.
And the audience reaction is intense. It leads to profound real-world consequences for these participants.
The industry makes a ton of money from the outrage and engagement these edits create.
Meanwhile, the participants are left to handle the fallout. It's easy for us, the audience, to dismiss them as just chasing fame, but the documented consequences are serious. Job loss, public abuse, even death threats.
And the sources we looked at detail the severe working conditions that lead to this manufactured drama in the first place. This goes beyond just tricky editing. It's a coercive environment.
The documentation is clear. Participants are performing labor under conditions that have been described as inhumane. They're designed to maximize emotional instability and reactivity for the cameras.
What kind of conditions?
Reports from these dating shows detail people enduring 20-hour workdays, being actively deprived of food and water, being plied with alcohol, being socially isolated when cameras aren't on them,
Lacking basic autonomy.
not being allowed to see the sun, having their passports and money confiscated during travel. The producers deliberately create a giant pressure cooker environment.
And the music and sound design are instrumental in making sure the audience buys into the manufactured conflict.
It encourages the audience to direct all of their skepticism toward the participant, judging them as manipulative or fame-hungry, rather than questioning the producers and editors who control the entire narrative and subject these workers to these insane conditions.
Sometimes using legal threats to keep them on the show.
It perfectly illustrates how sound steers your subconscious away from critical ethical thought. So we've spent a lot of time discussing the intentional manipulation that comes from adding music and abrasive sounds.
Right.
Now we have to pivot to the powerful and often misunderstood technique of intentional quiet.
Silence.
Silence is not just peace. It is one of the strongest and most surgical manipulation tactics in the entire sonic toolbox.
It's so easy to just assume that silence is a lack of sound, but you're saying it's an active, structural choice in cinematic storytelling.
Precisely. We need to distinguish between natural pauses, the quiet moments that reflect realistic speech patterns, and scripted pauses.
Scripted pauses.
These are intentionally placed by an editor for profound dramatic effect. They function as a deliberate moment for character introspection, or, most often, as a tension-building device.
So the pause lets the editor fine-tune the pacing and really affect the viewer's emotional experience.
And this structural use of silence is often captured by the phrase, the pregnant pause.
It's a weird phrase, but it makes sense. The silence is pregnant. It's filled with unspoken meaning or anticipation.
It is used exclusively to build significant tension right before a major decision, or a dramatic revelation, or a pivotal line of dialogue. It's an auditory cue that signals a character is experiencing this intense internal struggle.
So it forces the audience to lean in and fill that void with their own anxiety.
The silence forces the audience to participate in the character's internal struggle.
So when a drama goes dead silent and the camera just lingers on an actor's face before they deliver that killer line, that's not cheap. It's maximum anticipation engineering.
And what is the deep psychological impact of that prolonged quiet on the audience?
It feels uncomfortable.
The psychological effects are rapid and profound. Prolonged, manipulated silence, not just natural quiet, creates immediate discomfort and unease.
Why?
Because the brain is trained to interpret the sudden absence of expected sound as a sign of environmental change, which is often associated with foreshadowed danger or conflict.
So it triggers an alarm just as much as the sudden noise does.
It does. It triggers the audience's fight or flight response. It heightens our alertness. We become hypervigilant, scanning the screen in our own internal state for the source of the discomfort.
Silence itself becomes the threat.
And because the silence registers as a sign of potential danger, any sound or dialogue that breaks that silence is instantly amplified in its emotional and cognitive impact. That subsequent sound gains immense weight because your system is on high alert.
In a social context, we all know that feeling of being ignored, the silent treatment. It feels like real pain.
Does neurobiology actually validate that feeling?
It does, and this is perhaps the most shocking insight into the power of manipulative silence. Research has conclusively shown that being deliberately ignored or subjected to manipulative, isolating silence activates a specific brain region.
The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC.
Tell us more about the ACC.
The ACC is a part of the brain that plays a crucial role in emotion regulation and pain processing. And critically,
Yes.
it is the exact same area of the brain that registers physical pain.
So manipulative silence doesn't just feel awkward. It registers in your brain as a genuine form of social injury.
It feels like a cut or a bruise.
That is a staggering finding. The brain is just desperate for the silence to be broken.
Absolutely. The injury caused by the silence creates a neurological demand for resolution, a need for the social connection or the sound to resume, often at any cost.
Which is why silence is such a powerful tool in interviews or high-stakes dramas.
It literally forces the character or the viewer into a state of painful hyper-alertness, making them vulnerable to the next input, whether it's a question, a punchline, or a dramatic reveal.
So whether it's that screeching G5G flat 5 stinger forcing fear through the PAG, or the strategic pregnant pause forcing painful alertness through the ACC, our nervous systems are just constantly being worked over, managed, and steered. #tag conclusion. So this deep dive has revealed that the emotional roller coaster of modern media, especially unscripted reality TV and narrative journalism, is entirely engineered, down to the millisecond.
We've discussed a highly evolved two-pronged system. It leverages both industry standards and deep psychological exploitation.
On the production side, we see the technical playbook. The standardized cues, the rigid industrial metrics for track length and dynamics, the commercial necessity of bumpers, and music designed specifically to look dynamic in an editing bay.
A system that maximizes usability and minimizes cognitive noise.
And on the cognitive side, we see this sophisticated exploitation. The amygdala hijack that suspends rational thought, the transportation phenomenon that can make attitude change impervious to facts.
The repetition of leitmotifs to condition our emotional responses, and the strategic deployment of silence to induce neurological discomfort and hyper-alertness, often to the detriment of the real people involved in making the show.
The sonic architecture of media is not subtle, it's not accidental.
It leverages neurobiology and priming effects with surgical precision to steer your subconscious disposition. It predetermines who you root for, who you despise, and most importantly, how you interpret the truth of an event or the ethics of a situation.
Which brings us to a final synthesis, reflecting on the power and the application of this technology.
We spent time talking about the orbitofrontal cortex and how delaying musical resolution creates that physiological sonic debt that need to binge and see what happens next.
Right.
We also know unequivocally that music is an incredibly powerful therapeutic tool. Studies show certain simple musical compositions, like some of Mozart's sonatas, can measurably reduce the frequency of seizures in people with epilepsy.
Music can heal.
It can facilitate profound healing and improve complex brain function. So here is the provocative question for you, the listener, to mull over.
Considering that these incredibly sophisticated neurobiologically potent tools of affect, which can manipulate your brain toward a state of hyper-anticipation, compulsion, and psychological unease, are overwhelmingly used, day in and day out, for the singular purpose of generating profit-driven, manufactured, and sometimes ethically damaging drama in your daily entertainment. What is the cost of that debt? And what does it mean for society when the most powerful tools for emotional management are primarily focused on maximizing our internal distress rather than on healing?